As we proceed to give you what you need, we are live on Rumble, YouTube, X. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Facebook. Good morning. LinkedIn is pending. Instagram. Good morning. TikTok. Good morning. We are here. We live on TikTok. We are live on TikTok. And mute ourselves over on LinkedIn. We're good on LinkedIn, as you can hear. Instagram, we are in. TikTok, we are here. I called an audible today. As I tell you all always, sometimes I try to tell you what the topic's going to be for the following day. I had to call an audible today because I saw something, as I always tell you all. My topics are always pending any changes or anything that might happen in with regards to what we will call current events. If some current event pushes a topic off the front page, so to speak, then that current event becomes the topic of the day. Today, we got to talk about black male violence because it is an issue. It has always been an issue. Good morning, Nikki over there. And it's become more of an issue. Actually, it's become more and more of an issue over let me not even say it that way. It's a topic right now simply because some black male violence took place the other day. Today is Friday. I believe this happened on Wednesday. And it became a big news story. And a lot of people have been talking about it over the last 24 hours or so. I got wind of it yesterday. Been talking a lot on X about it over the last 12 hours or so. No, more than 12 hours. 20 hours or so. And we're going to talk about it here today. So for those of you who don't know what happened, in Frisco, Texas, there was a confrontation between two young men, teenagers. And what happened is this kid named Austin Metcalf, he's a white kid. He was stabbed to death by a black kid by the name of Carmelo with a K. Carmelo, his name is literally Carmelo Anthony, but not the basketball player. Carmelo Anthony, that just happens to be this kid's name. That kid happens to be black. And there was a dispute regarding somebody sitting in a tent that they weren't supposed to be sitting in. So long story short, actually it's a pretty short story. There's a tent that each group gets to sit in. That's a certain tent for one group, there's a tent for another group. So these kids are sitting under their tent for their school or their group. And this black kid, Carmelo, he is sitting in a tent under a tent that he's not supposed to be sitting in. So the white kid walks up to him and says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be sitting here." And the black kid basically starts verbally getting aggressive with the white kid, saying, "Well, hey, I'm not moving." Long story short, that's not the exact language. We don't know exactly what he said. We only have secondhand accounts from his brother because the white kid who got stabbed, his brother was there with him. And they basically start having a verbal altercation. Now, the black kid has a backpack with him. So what the white kid does is he grabs the black kid's backpack, and this turns into a scuffle. And long story short, the black kid stabs the white kid in the chest, and the white kid dies on the scene. That's what happened. and the black kid is arrested, and who knows what's going to become of him. That's what happened. And we're going to talk about this here today in a bigger picture, not just this story itself, but we're going to talk about this in the bigger picture of black male violence, because this is an issue and it's continued to be an issue in our community, specifically for black folks. It's not really about white folks, but it is because of the way that these kind of violent situations have been framed over the years. And I didn't create this, but we are going to leverage it and talk about it. So introducing myself, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of 40 books, done 4 TED Talks. I have this company called Work on Your Game. We help professional entrepreneurs systematize and scale their businesses from 6 to 7 figures. Learn more about that at the link in my profile on whatever platform you are watching this on. So this situation right here, it is kind of sort of headline news because everybody's talking about it right now. It just happened in the last 24 hours or 48 hours. So everybody's talking about it now, but is this going to go on and on and on? Like, let's say the George Floyd situation, I seriously doubt that. I would bet money against that happening. I bet this story gets pushed off the headlines within about, it happened on Wednesday. Today is Friday. I bet this is off the headlines by next Wednesday for the most part. This is not going to be that big of a story for a long time because, and we know why. Everybody knows the reason why is because the wrong races are involved. And there are some people, I'm sure there are some black folks in here right now. And I'll say this I should have said this at the beginning. I might get banned off TikTok again here today. I might get suspended today, not because I'm going to say anything that is necessarily crazy, even though some people may think it's crazy. I might get suspended because some people are going to think that what I'm saying is crazy, and TikTok may end up not liking it for whatever reason because they are encouraged to believe that. Because I'm going to say some things that challenge the narrative of what a lot of people may want to believe or what a lot of people want to think. Or, son, close that door. You come in or come out, but close that door. What people want to think about the situation between races, especially when it comes to violence. Because we all of us know, whether you would like to admit it verbally or not, whether you want to say it on the internet or not, whether you want to put your name behind it or not, had the races been reversed, had some white kid and a black kid got into an argument over whatever, it doesn't even matter what it is, and the white kid stabbed the black kid in the heart and the black kid died on the scene in front of his brother, this would be headline news and it would not be gone after a week. There may be people out there marching and needing to take a day off from work, and all the stuff you saw happen with George Floyd 5 years ago would have occurred or possibly could have occurred. There would be the potential for it occurring had this been a white person stabbing a black person. We all know this is true, but because a black person stabbing a white person, there's a bunch of people I've seen on social media, specifically on X. It's the only place where I really engage in these conversations other than doing my live streams. When I say conversation, I mean back and forth engagement. I see a lot of people coming out, a lot of black people, and of course some white people coming out and saying, well, why are they making it about race? It's just a dispute between two kids. And why are people trying to racialize this? And they're saying that the people who are coming out and talking about race at all in this engagement, they are the racists. And this is completely ridiculous. That is ridiculous for somebody to say something like that, because, again, had the races been reversed, these same people will be coming out and talking about racism and racial everything just because it was a white person doing it to a black person, because it's black, but because it's black doing it to white, now all of a sudden people had to come out and preemptively say you shouldn't make it about race. Now, let me be clear about something. Do I think that the black kid stabbed the white kid because of race? Do I think the black kid just doesn't like white people and he was just looking for a white person to attack? No, I do not believe that. I don't believe that the situation itself was necessarily about race. The situation itself, meaning had this black kid had a black kid come up to him and say, you can't sit at this tent, and grab his backpack, the black kid might have stabbed another black kid over this situation. I don't think the black kid was looking around for some white person to attack in this situation. He's from that area, and it seems like that's an area where there are black people and white people mixed all in together. I don't think this kid's just walking around through life with just a negative energy towards white people in general. I don't think he did it because of that. We'll never know. We can only go off of what he says, and we haven't heard him speak. And I mean, the outcome is going to be the outcome either way. I don't think this was a racially driven situation. However, this is the bigger picture that I told you we're going to get to here today. What happens in the black community? We already know statistically 18 to 35-year-old black males, when they are losing their lives, is usually due to violence that is at the hands of other 18 to 35-year-old black males. This is indisputable. This is a statistical fact. And all of us, even subjectively, eye test, especially if you're black and you're from the neighborhood, you know that the most dangerous situation is an 18 to 35-year-old black male, not any other group and any other demographic. So this situation, again, I think is going to get wiped off the page simply because who's involved. And a lot of people would be demanding that this get talked about had it been a different situation. Again, George Floyd situation, people had days off of work. There were money donations. People were out marching all over what? Because the cop was white and the victim was black. Now that the roles are reversed, nobody wants to make news out of this. And the same race hustlers who would have told you so much, had so much to say when the George Floyd situation occurred, now they're coming out. And again, it'd be one thing if you said nothing. They're coming out and preemptively telling you you're not allowed to talk about this because you're not allowed to talk about it with regards to race because so what? It's just a situation that occurred. That is nonsense. Because the black kid stabbing a white kid, there's a large percentage of the population that either doesn't want to talk about it or they don't want it talked about at all with regards to race. And as a matter of fact, as I already said, they get mad at anyone who even mentions race because all of a sudden it needs to be something other than race because the black person is a perpetrator. That is bullshit. And we all know it's bullshit. And again, there are white people out there who probably think this, but they probably can't say it out loud. I can say it out loud. So I'm saying it out loud right now. That's bullshit. And we can't play this game. We're not going to get to where we need to go as people, as a group, if we have to go around playing this game and not addressing what actually needs to be addressed. And we're going to get into all of this here today. And If a white person as the perpetrator and the black person is a victim, as I already said 3 times here today, even extrapolating the situation into things that have nothing to do with it, people would find a way to talk about race somehow, some way. They want to take it back to slavery. They want to take it back to the systemic racism. They want to talk about red line. They want to talk about all the bad things white people do. They would extrapolate the situation to be about a huge conversation just about racial dynamics in America. And every race hustler you know will be on live. They'd be writing articles. They'd be making videos. They'd be writing books. They'd be giving speeches about the whole racial dynamic simply because this situation gives them an entry point to talk about it all over again. This is what race hustlers do. That's their entire business model. All right, my business model has nothing to do with talking about race. I like talking about topics that happen to be current events because I can apply my way of thinking to it and share whatever I want to say about it with the general public, which is what I'm doing right now. But I make no money by talking about race. So I can't be a race hustler because, again, to be a race hustler, the financial element has to be involved. So just to keep the situation and conversation around races, this is what the race hustlers do. And now they're doing, again, preemptive race hustling. Some of them, not all of them yet, but we'll see. This situation is still pretty fresh. But now there's a black person. Again, what does race have to do with the situation? Well, let's go back. Let's go back to 1965. 1965, there's a guy named Patrick Moynihan, and he wrote a report called what is colloquially become known as the Moynihan Report. And the actual name of the report was called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. This report was written and released in 1965, and it was Mr. Moynihan. His name was Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He was an assistant secretary in the U.S. Department of Labor. So he was basically asked by the administration, find out what's going on with the Negro in America and figure out what needs to happen so we can help them out. So I talked about this a couple of days ago, and we talked about Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I know a lot of you are not fans of former President Johnson, especially black folks. But as I said then, I believe LBJ started out with a positive intention to try to help black Americans. And he looked at all the resources he had available to figure out what can we do. The fundamental flaw with LBJ's approach was that there is nothing that the government, being the way it was structured back then and is still structured to this day, there's not much that the government can do to manufacture success in black people. So the fact that he was even asking the question was setting everybody up for failure because the government is inefficient in doing things like this and generally ineffective in doing things like this. But I do believe LBJ had positive intentions. So here's what happened with the Moynihan Report. Some of you are familiar with this report. Some of you are not. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Moynihan goes and does a study, and he goes and finds out what's happening in the black communities, or what they call the Negro communities, to find out what's going on. And the central argument that he came to when he put his report out, and y'all can find this report, by the way, you can find this report online as a PDF, and you can read the whole thing if you wish. I'm giving you an overview of what the report was, but if you want to know more details, go find it and read it. He said, the central argument is that the structure of black families, particularly the high rate of single parent households, was a key factor in the ongoing racial inequality. Let me say that sentence one more time, and I'm going to tell you how all of this is connected from 60 years ago. Moynihan went and did a study on the black American, and he found that a central reason why there was racial inequality in America at the time, 1965, was because of the plethora of single parent households, statistically speaking, in the black community. There were too many single parent households without two parents at home, as I've talked about, man, woman, child. This was a key factor in ongoing racial inequality. In other words, if you look at what's funny is let's just talk about this point right here. If you look at what someone like the last Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, and the one before that, Joe Biden, and the one before that, Hillary Clinton, have talked about when it comes to helping minority Americans. Son, I'm recording. You can come join me if you want. No, I'm recording. You want to join me? Okay. Well, you have to be quiet. You want to stay in here. So what all of them talk about, and leave that alone. What all of them talk about is, hey, we're going to help black people out. What did Kamala Harris say she was going to do? She said, we're going to give you this kind of tax credit. We're going to give you this kind of break. We're going to give people these grants to start businesses. Notice Kamala Harris didn't say anything about increasing the amount of two-parent households in the black community. She didn't mention this at all. Even though in 1965, a person who worked for the Department of Labor said, this is what we need to do to help the black people in America. You want to come up here?
No, I just want.
Not right now. So She didn't say anything about this. Joe Biden said nothing about this. Hillary Clinton said nothing about this. Barack Obama had one little snippet in one of his speeches, and not a snippet in his administration, let's say, but in one of his speeches, he did touch on this, but he didn't touch on it before, he didn't touch on it after, and he never really pushed on making it happen the same way he pushed for, let's say, for example, Obamacare. The black community has had the same issue for 60 years, is that the root of the inequality is that we do not have two-parent households. They told everyone this in 1965, but what people need to know is what ended up happening. So anyway, he said, this is where it starts, okay? The high rate of single-parent households is the key to racial inequality. He attributed this is what he says is the reason for it: historical oppression, systemic discrimination, and economic disadvantage. So he said these are some of the things that have contributed to this situation. But he also warned that the weakening of the family structure would hinder progress even in the face of these civil rights advancements. In short, this is what it means. I know some people ask when they talk about something like MAGA, Make America Great Again. When Trump came out using that phrase, a lot of black folks who didn't like Trump and still don't like Trump said, well, when was America ever great for black people? And there have been a whole lot of discussions and argument about this. And there's a bunch of black people who say it was never great for black people, even though many of you have not done any historical analysis. You just go off of what you heard from other people. Let's talk about that. After slavery ended and before the structural programs were put in place for the United States government, let's just call that 100 years. Slavery ended in the 1860s, and then all these programs came in around the 1960s. There was a 100-year period when black Americans were no longer slaves, but they also didn't have civil rights. During that period, black Americans made a significant amount of progress on our own, I guess we can say, because there were not government programs to help us out. We had all of the calamities that happened, like the Black Wall Street being burned down and all kinds of stuff happening to black people, Jim Crow laws, again, segregation, all kinds of things structured against black people. But we were still making progress over that 100-year period, despite all of these situations set up that were allegedly designed to make us not be able to make progress. Black people were still making progress regardless. Now, why were we making progress? One reason is because of the segregation, because of the fact that we weren't allowed into the system, because of the fact that we weren't having a whole bunch of support from the government, let's just say, black people had no choice but to figure it out on our own. We had to figure it out on our own. And when black people had to figure it out on their own, guess what? They figured it out. Why? Because if you put people who have any type of capability on their own to figure things out, they generally figure things out. And black people start figuring things out, building our own businesses, building our own communities, supporting ourselves. The internal was all in good shape. Two-parent households, rising in education. We were making significant progress for that 100-year period. Then all of a sudden the government got involved and said, well, we're going to do some things to help black people out. And that's when the progress stopped. That's when the progress stopped and we started going backwards. That all happened. As soon as the government got involved, we started going backwards. And again, I believe Lyndon Johnson had positive intentions, but his outcomes did not work. And this is the issue with the government. They often start with positive intentions, but the outcomes of their implementations end up not working. And then they don't really get held accountable for the falseness or the wrongness of their initiatives. And this applies to all politicians. This is the reason why I tell all citizens, do not depend on a politician or stake your hopes on what a politician is going to do, because the government is inefficient and generally has proven to be ineffective in solving your problems. So if you're expecting the government to solve your problems, you're setting yourself up for failure. So anyway, he said, again, let me say again what it was said in the Moynihan report. The weakening of the family structure would hinder progress even in the face of civil advancements. So if the government were to put a bunch of programs in place to quote unquote help black people, if we don't figure out how to get the family back together, even these programs are not going to solve the problem. That's what he told Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965. If you put these programs in place that Johnson did put in place, he put several of them in place, civil rights bill, which became law, welfare, and several other things. We put all these things in place. If we don't put the black family back together, it won't matter. They're still going to fail. Moynihan told LBJ this. Now, here's what happened. The report was looked at as controversial historically because here's what critics said about it. You're blaming black families for their struggles. That's the way it was framed. And this is the reason why LBJ did not implement what was told to him in the Moynihan report. So the report came out, but they didn't do anything with the report because Moynihan was not president, obviously. All he could do was tell the president what he found, but he didn't have the power to implement anything. He had to get that through the president, and he wasn't able to get it through the president. And it was labeled as, here's the reason why we're not going to implement this report, because people knew about the report when it came out. He said, we're not going to implement it because it looks like you're blaming black families for not being together. Well, okay, so, and again, this word blame is an interesting term that people tend to throw this around, even to this day. If you hold somebody accountable for their situation, they say, well, it sounds like you're blaming me. Well, so what if I'm blaming you? If you accept blame, also known as responsibility, also known as ownership for your situation, that means you are empowered to do something about it. So if Moynihan comes out with this report and it's quote unquote blaming black families for not being together, and the black families were to accept that ownership responsibility, now guess what? Now they had the power to change it, get black families back together. And according to Mr. Moynihan, this is what is going to make the black family stronger and the Negro community stronger. But since it was framed that, oh, you're just blaming black people, a lot of black people were basically told, it was indoctrinated into them that being told that you not keeping your families together is blaming you, and therefore you don't need to take responsibility. We need to blame the government for the situation. We got to blame the government for slavery, blame the government for all these things they have black people behind, instead of you taking ownership of something that you are doing that is leading to the situation, black folks. No, let's put all the blame on the government. Therefore, the government is responsible for solving the problem. And for the last 60 years, black people have been buying this hook, line, and sinker. The government is responsible for the problem. Therefore, the government is responsible for the solution. This is where you get your Democratic candidates that you've seen for the last 25 years. This is where they come from. They've been indoctrinated and taught this their entire lives. That's how they build careers around it. Obama, Clinton, Biden, Harris, all of them come from this line of thinking because they're Democrat. They have a choice. The government is responsible for the problem. The government is responsible for the solution. Again, let me ask you all a question. How many solutions has the government provided that has helped you, especially if you're black? Again, positive intentions. What's the outcome? And when you work in the government, you have no choice but to do what the government is saying that the government has to do. So this report was labeled as controversial, even though historically we can look back and see this is absolutely the truth. If you put two-parent families back into the community will be stronger. If people ask me, Dre, what are the biggest problems in the black community? Number one, lack of two-parent homes. Number one. And this has always been the problem. For the last 30 years, this has been the problem in the black community. Number one problem that the black community has is a lack of two-parent homes. Now, what does all this have to do with black male violence happening today? I'm going to get to that. Again, I got to give you all this background so y'all understand this. Jesse Jackson. Y'all know Jesse? Y'all know Jesse Jackson? 30 years later, here's what Jesse Jackson said. This is in 1993. Jesse Jackson said the following. This is a quote straight from Jesse Jackson. This is when Jesse was in his heyday as being the premier guy that I now call him a race hustler. Back then, Jesse was still a race hustler, but I think he had more positive intentions back then, and he was being listened to more by black people back then than he is now. And his pal, Al Sharpton, as well. Jesse's kind of semi-retired, but Al Sharpton's still out there actively taking people to Costco to buy stuff because they had DEI programs. Why don't he just take them to a black-owned business and buy stuff? Doesn't even make any sense, does it? And that's because he's a race hustler and he's paid for by these corporations. But anyway, Jesse Jackson, 1993, this is what he said, quote, "There is nothing more painful to me at this stage in my life than to walk down the street and hear footsteps and start thinking about robbery, then look around and see somebody white and feel relieved." Close quote. That's Jesse Jackson in 1993. If you don't get what he's saying is when he hears footsteps, he's wondering if somebody's creeping up on him, might do something to him. And when he looks around and see who the footsteps are coming from, he sees a white person and he feels, oh, I'm safe because it's a white person. But if it was a black person, he would feel endangered. This is in 1993, folks. And that's Jesse Jackson. He's one of the godfathers of race hustling. He said that about black people in 1993. And here's the thing with people like Jesse and Al and others. Back then, in the late 80s going into the 90s, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and they were the two main guys back then. And now we got a plethora of these folks. What they used to do in the late 80s or early 90s, any of you old enough to remember, you know, what they used to talk about when they were talking about race, they would sometimes talk to white people and to the government. And Jesse even I think he tried to run for president. I believe it was 88. He tried to run for president. They were talking to black people and holding black people accountable. That's what they used to do. That's what Jesse and Al Sharpton used to do. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton used to go to black people and tell black people what we need to do to get our own shit together. That's what they used to do. What is Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson doing now? Again, Jesse's pretty retired. What's Al Sharpton doing now? Last I heard from Al Sharpton, he was taking a bunch of black people to Costco to have a buy-in. They were going to go spend a bunch of money at Costco as a way of letting Costco know we like the fact that you're keeping DEI programs in place. That is a complete flip from what they used to do back in the 90s. Jesse Jackson used to hold black folks accountable. I remember Charles Barkley mentioned this in his book he did with Mike Wilbon. He said that one time Jesse Jackson went to a prison. He's in a prison. He's talking to a bunch of black guys who have been convicted, and they have these long sentences. And Jesse Jackson says to the men in the prison, you know how they have somebody come speak at the prison? So Jesse says to these guys, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get this prison shut down. And all the inmates in the prison are all excited. Like, yeah, shut it down. Jesse shut it down because they're thinking they're going to get out of prison. Jesse says, all right, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to shut it down. And they all listen. They want to hear what he says. You know what Jesse Jackson told them? He said to them, when you get released from your sentence, don't do anything. It's going to land you back in here. And then they'll have no choice but to shut the prison down because there's nobody in it. See, that's the way what we now have as race hustlers. That's how they used to talk to black people. Do you hear anybody talking like that now? You hear a black person talking like that now, they get attacked by black people for saying anything. If a black person was to come out and say something like that today, they would get attacked by black people for saying it. But Jesse Jackson used to go around saying this to black people back in the days. What's happened is the flip. We flipped it. And the issue is not color. The issue is culture. The issue is not black people have something that is inherently wrong with them, like Margaret Sanger, who started Planned Parenthood, seemed to believe. It's not that black people have something in their genetics that make them worse or weaker or not capable of success, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's none of that. It's not the color, it's the culture. What is culture? Culture is a set of standards, norms, and accepted ways of behavior that a group tends to adopt and tends to live by. That's the culture. And we have a problem in the black community, our culture of black male violence. That's the topic. And there's an issue in the black community, as I said, with young black males when it comes to violence, and we respond to any form of slight, challenge, or conflict. No, not right now. I'm working. So we respond to any form of slight, challenge, or conflict by labeling it as, this is a word you hear often these days, disrespect. And if something goes over the line of disrespect, then that gives a person license to get aggressive, angry, violent, etc., because you just cannot in any way, shape, or form tolerate disrespect. This is the way that people have started to frame it. When you see people throwing this word disrespect around so often these days, that it's lost its value. In short, if you don't know a person in person, you can't disrespect them. You can't disrespect somebody through the internet who you don't know. They don't know you, you don't know them, you can't disrespect them. You can say whatever you want. You can say something incendiary or something you think is nasty or something you think is insulting to another person. But if you don't actually know them, you can't disrespect them. If you can't respect somebody, you can't disrespect somebody. That's how it works. You can't disrespect something that you don't have the power to respect. It doesn't work. The challenge that a lot of males have, and because males have testosterone regardless of their age, is that a lot of males, they have ego. And when you have ego and your ego is easily bruised or pricked or impugned on, then a lot of males don't have the tools, the mental or emotional tools for dealing with that in such a way that would be, let's just call it productive, for lack of a better term. And it doesn't mean that a man should just allow anybody to do anything or say anything to him. I don't subscribe to that myself as a black male. But at the same time, you have to know when do you need the aggression versus when you don't need the aggression. And what type of aggression do you need? Because there are certain types of aggressions that make sense and certain types that don't. For example, this black kid, let's say I was in that same situation. I'm the black kid and some white kid says you're not allowed to sit under this tent. For whatever reason, maybe I thought I was allowed to sit under the tent. Maybe I was doing it on purpose, sitting somewhere that I wasn't supposed to sit. Maybe I just don't like the way the white kid approached me. Maybe I don't like that. Let's say I'm the black kid, right? Some white kid approached me and said, you're not supposed to be sitting here. I just don't like his tone. I don't like his energy. I don't like the way he approached me. I think he could have said it more politely. And I kind of don't like that. So I'm not going to just back down and let this dude talk to me like that because I feel like he's trying to punk me. Let's just say that's the way that I think about it. Maybe I just punch him in the face. Now, if I punch him in the face, maybe I get suspended. Hey, maybe I get beat up because, again, his brother was with him. So maybe the two of them beat me up. Whatever the situation. Maybe some of my friends come and we beat all of them up. Maybe I get, who knows, suspended from school. Who knows what could possibly happen. But everybody lives to tell the story. I mean, y'all saw the movie Friday when Debo punched Craig, and then Craig pulled out the gun, and his dad said, no, put the gun away and fight like a man. If you win, you win. You lose, you lose. And he could have just did that. He pulled out a knife, first of all, and it's the same thing the kid's dad said. Austin, what's this guy's last name? Austin Metcalf. When Austin Metcalf's dad came out and spoke, the first thing the dad said, well, at least the first thing in his statement that I saw was, who are this kid's parents? Like, how is your son, 16, 17 years old, walking around carrying a knife? What does he have a knife for? He's at a track event. What do you got a knife for? What's going to happen? Why are you carrying around a knife? And again, why do you even feel the need to use it in a situation like that? Again, fight him. If you got an issue with what he did and the way he approached you, then just put your hands up and fight. But what's the knife for? The knife is a deadly weapon, depending on how you use it, right? You use a knife on somebody in an aggressive way, that is deadly force. That could put you in, again, even if, let's say he didn't kill the kid. Let's say he just cut him. And then people find out that he cut him with that knife. You have used deadly force. You're going to end up in jail either way. And you're going to have to appear in front of a judge and you're going to have to go through a trial because you use deadly force. So even if you have something that allows you to use deadly force, you got to know when and where to use it and under what circumstances does it make sense, what circumstances does it not. You carry a gun, for example, you can't just pull it out just because somebody says something to you that you don't like. By pulling it out, you are assaulting a person with a deadly weapon. If those of you who don't know the law, assault is when you make a threat to another person. You don't have to actually do anything. When you threaten another person, you are assaulting them. When you actually do it, that's called battery. So assault and battery together is when you threaten and then you follow through on the threat. If you just do something and don't threaten, then it's just battery. And if you threaten and do nothing, then it's assault. But any one of those could land you in the back of a police car. Everybody understand? And this is the reason why people need to be taught how to temper their aggression. And aggression is a good thing. I just posted this on social media the other day. Aggression is a good thing because when you are capable of aggression and you're capable of violence, actually violence was the word that I used. When you're capable of violence and people know you're capable of violence, people tend to kind of treat you in a certain way versus when they don't believe you're capable of violence, they treat you in a different way. This is very true, especially amongst males. All males in the room understand exactly what I just said. When people believe you are capable of violence, there's a certain line that they won't cross when they're dealing with you. But that doesn't mean that you should just go around committing violence against people just because you can. That doesn't make any sense because, again, you could, first of all, you may commit violence against another person. They may be just as able and willing to be violent as you are, and they might be better at it than you are. So, again, that's how you might end up getting your ass whipped. That's how you could end up losing your life by the same person who you got violent with. Secondly, even if you succeed in your situation of being violent, you don't know who you're dealing with, especially these days. The rules are a little bit different these days than they were in the 90s. Back in the 90s, you get in an altercation with another person, two males, and somebody gets beat up. They just take that ass whoop and go home and they come back the next day. These days, somebody gets beat up in an altercation. First of all, everybody is filming it on their phone. Secondly, what word do I want to use to this? The integrity amongst males is not the same as it was back in the day. Meaning that a male starts a conflict, starts it with his mouth, gets into a physical altercation, gets his ass whipped. Instead of just taking that ass whipping and learning from it, now somebody's going to go and telling you they're going to go call the police. So now you end up in a court situation just because you beat somebody's ass. Back in the day, somebody got their ass beat. Nobody called the cops. At least nobody who was engaged, they didn't call. Maybe a neighbor who saw it and they didn't like it, they called the cops. But neither of the combatants was calling the cops back in the day. But these days is a different situation. So you have to learn how to, again, you got to gauge who do you engage with and who do you not these days. Because, again, the heart is not the same as it was when I was, let's say, 16 or 17 years old. So the issue in the black community, as I said, young black males, we're labeling everything as disrespect. White people use it too, but I'm talking about black people because that's the subject. Black males labeling things as disrespect and taking any form of disrespect to mean that you now have license to get as violent as you wish with the person who, quote unquote, disrespected you. First of all, we got to understand the law. Anybody can say anything that they want to you. That doesn't, unless they're threatening you, that does not give you license to be physically violent with the other person. In the court of law, you are in the wrong. And you're going to end up having to pay a lawyer and maybe get a legal judgment against you because of what you did, because you took their, quote unquote, verbal disrespect or whatever they did or said or whatever way you want to interpret it to mean you could get violent. No, you can't. And again, I'm not saying that anybody is perfect on this. If a white person calls you the N-word to your face with the hard ER, that does not technically give you a license to get violent with them. Not technically on a legal basis. That does not give you license to get violent with them. If someone calls you the N-word with the ER and you punch them in the face and break their jaw, I can understand why you did it. I understand why you did it. But if the cops come around, you are getting arrested for battery. And you might get found guilty. You might have to, cop a plea and take probation or whatever the situation may be because you punched them in the face. What they said is not equal to you punching them in the face. Again, I'm not saying you may not do it. It depends case by case basis. Depends on who you're dealing with. But you have to understand these things and know what you're putting yourself in when you decide to take action. And everyone needs to understand these things. And everybody knows what I'm talking about here as far as the black male violence. We know the rates of violent crime in America. We know the rate of violent crime, specifically when it comes to lives being lost, murders in the United States of America, is 5 times as high black on black than it is white on white. 5 times as high. The rate, meaning the raw number, if you look at the raw number, is exactly the same. Number of white on white murder, black on black murder numbers exactly pretty much the same. But so how is it 5 times higher? It's 5 times higher because there are 5 times more white people than there are black people, which means we have to be doing it 5 times as much as white people are when they got 5 times as many people, but we get the same number of violent crimes, specifically murder. And again, these stats have been known for a long time. They haven't changed. They've been the same year after year. Everybody knows this stuff. Generally, we understand it, even if you don't know the stats. And it's not all males and it's not all races. So some people try to say, well, this is just a male thing. Males just have testosterone. They got to learn how to control their tempers. In a general sense, that is true. But let's not try to make this. Let's not water the situation down to something that is not. We know what it is. This is specifically black males because this is cultural for us. I just said it's culture, not color. It's not that when you're black, all of a sudden you're going to be violent. No, it's the culture. It's the black culture. And we adopt this culture, we celebrate this culture, we accept this culture, and we become of the culture. And I'm saying this as someone who is of the culture. I come from the hood. I listen to gangster rap music damn near all day. If I got music on, it's often some gangster rap music. I listen to this stuff. I know the words to this stuff. I'm a fan of these artists. At the same time, I come from a 2-parent household, and I had the sense to understand the separation between what is being said in the music as entertainment and what I should actually do as a prescription for my life. Thank you for that gift, whoever just sent that. Now, the reason that I'm able to draw that line is one reason because I come from a 2-parent household, the very thing that we don't have in our community. And another, because I just have the intelligence and the sense to understand that even though I heard what 50 Cent or Tupac said in their song and I understand the energy behind it, I can channel that energy into doing positive things like going to the gym and working out or playing a sport rather than taking that into the street. And I don't like the way somebody looked at me in the mall. Now I'm gonna go fight them because I'm being fueled by a G Unit mixtape. All right, you have to understand the difference. The issue is there's a lot of young black men coming up in our community who do not have a father at home. They don't have anyone at home teaching them, okay, as a man, here is how you channel your energy, because emotion is an energy, anger is an energy, frustration is an energy. If you feel someone has disrespected you, you may be annoyed or angered by that. That's an energy. And it's not that you should never feel this way, because anything could happen. Somebody walks up to me and says the wrong thing to me, even today, walking around in a suit as a business owner, as a father, somebody says something to me, I could take it a certain way that's going to trigger a certain emotion and a certain energy in me. The difference is I know how to channel that energy into doing something that might be a little bit better as a long-term decision than what some 16-year-old kid who doesn't have proper guidance might end up doing himself. And especially if you don't have a father at home. I don't know the background of this kid who did the stabbing. Maybe one of you know. If you know, you can put it in the comments when I get around to the comments. I'm going to take comments and questions as soon as I get through all this material. Even if this kid did have a parent at home, 2 parents at home, it depends on what is that parent actually doing? How is that parent actually influencing his kid? And if that parent is at home, how the hell does your kid end up walking around carrying a knife? And what is he carrying a knife for? What is going on in his life that he feels like he needs to carry a knife to a track meet? Again, even if you have a knife, I got knives in the house, but I don't walk around with a knife in my back pocket expecting that I'm going to need to use it. Now, again, even if I had it, if I'm pulling it out, I understand. I logically understand. I can only pull this out if I can justifiably say I felt like I was in physical danger, therefore I use a knife. But if I'm not in physical danger and I use a knife, now that's an issue. Again, you can't use deadly force unless someone is somehow, some way using deadly force against you and you can justify that you felt like you were physically in danger and you had to do something. Doesn't sound like from what we've heard that this kid was in that situation. And even if he ends up, let's say he ends up exonerating himself. Let's say this kid gets found not guilty. He goes to court. This black kid who did the stabbing. Let's say that happens. Now he's got this on his record that he had to go through this case. He got it, that he was charged. It's going to be on the front page of Google. Anybody Googles him. This is going to be on his name for the rest of his life. All right. Is this a winning situation for him? Absolutely not. Where's he going to go to school? Is he going to go to college and play football? I heard that they said that he played football in high school. Is he going to get a college scholarship from where? What school is going to give him a scholarship knowing this? So he screwed himself over, even if he ends up exonerated in the whole situation, because this is going to be on his name forever. And again, who are the parents? And this is how it works, folks. If you're a parent, these are the rules that once your kid leaves the house, i.e. they go off to college or they just move out to become an adult. So let's say around age 18. Once your kid leaves the house, what they do is not on you anymore. Your hands are clean. All right. You raised them. You gave them the foundation. They understand right from wrong. Hopefully they understand everything that you demonstrated and taught to them. Whatever they do at that point, they are responsible for what they did. Now, it doesn't mean you can't still help them out. They need some money. They need to crash on your couch. They need to move back into the house when they're 24, whatever the situation. Of course, as a parent, you can still help them out, but you are not responsible for their adult level decisions once they leave the house. But if they're a minor and they're still living in your house, you are responsible because you are legally responsible for them at that point. They're a minor. That doesn't mean the parents are going to go to jail because the kid stabbed this other kid. What I mean is those parents are going to be held accountable. Like, yeah, somebody's asking, who are the parents? And people should be asking that. A 16-year-old kid stabs another 16-year-old kid, whatever age these kids are, teenagers. First thing not the first thing I'm wondering, but one of the things I'm wondering is who is this kid's parents that he's walking around carrying a knife and he took this dispute over a seat under a tent to mean he needs to pull out a knife and stab this other kid. Again, even if he's going to get his ass whipped, how could he even, what was going on in his head that he even got to the point that he would think this is what I should do? How did he get there? I'm just trying to figure that out. I'm just trying to figure out how he even got to that point of having this in his head. And in our culture, we all know, again, this is culture, not color. We know that this is in our music. What kind of music are we putting out there? We know the most popular black artists are gangster rappers. Now, can we all agree to this? The most popular black artists are gangster rappers. They are highly celebrated. Again, I'm a fan of this music. It's in our neighborhoods. People walk around with this energy, and it's become so popular that we even are selling it and starting to infuse it into other cultures. So this white kid who got stabbed, maybe he listens to the music too. It looked like from the pictures that I saw that he's got some black friends. I'm sure those black kids listen to the music. He listens to the music. They're all part of this. They all have jumped into this culture, this what we call hip hop culture. It's in our neighborhoods, it's in our music, it's in our movies, it's in our art, and it's an energy the black males walk around with all day. That's the thing. This is what Jesse Jackson was talking about 30 years ago. It's still true to this day. That black males walk around with this energy that is influenced by the music that, hey, I'm not going to be disrespected. You're not going to do or say the wrong thing to me or look at me the wrong way, or I'm going to react in a much more negative way than whatever it is that you did. And this kind of energy leads to these clashes. When you're walking around with that energy in your head, you only need the slightest thing for you to go just be set off by it and to become violent. And had this white kid who got stabbed been a black kid, the same thing could have happened. It wouldn't be news. I wouldn't be talking about it. But the same thing could have happened had it been a black kid. So while I don't believe race drove this, race does become part of the conversation for a couple of reasons. Number one, had it been a white kid stabbing a black kid, would race be the subject of conversation? Absolutely it would. And number two, because this is black violence, black male violence, and we're losing a lot of our black people to black violence. There's a whole movement out there called Black Lives Matter. You heard of these people? Black Lives Matter. You notice, and this is one of the main issues I've always had with Black Lives Matter, is that they only pop up when there's a white person to blame. They never pop up when a black person is responsible, even if that black person did something to take the life of another black person. The movement's called Black Lives Matter. That means any black life that is lost is an issue, or a black life that's not lost yet, but it looks like it might get lost. We need to be talking about it. Isn't that what the concept Black Lives Matter should mean? So this black kid just stabbed a white kid. He's incarcerated right now. He's going to be facing a trial over who knows what kind of charge he's going to get. He might get a manslaughter charge. He might get a murder charge. He's going to have to go to court and defend himself. And a lot of his life is going to be altered because of this situation, even if he's exonerated. So Black Lives Matter should have something to say about this, shouldn't it? I mean, it's his life. It's a black person. His life is being affected, and it matters, right? So why are they not talking about it? Where is Black Lives Matter? I ain't heard them say anything in a long time. The issue I always had with them and the people who supported them is that they only make noise when they can blame a white person. And that is what is called, that is race hustling. That is race hustling. And when you're making money off it, like BLM did, they are race hustlers. Even those of you who are not black, listening to me right now, you understand everything that I'm saying. You see it in the media that comes out with black people. You see it in black people media, the media we put out, the content that we put out. Even if you're not from a black community and you don't spend a lot of time around black males, everything I'm saying, you understand it because you have the internet. You can see it. We promote this. These are our popular people. This is the thing. Our most popular people in our culture are the artists who make violent music, and they insist. Again, some people may say, well, what about white people who do movies shooting each other? What about that, Dre? Well, here's what about it, is that those are movies, and we know it's a movie. We know they are acting. What do your favorite gangster rappers insist when they talk in their music? They insist that everything they're telling you is the truth. Is this true? They insist that everything they're telling you is real. They insist that when they say in their song that they'll shoot you, that they really will in real life, not on the microphone, not on camera, they will actually shoot you. They insist that the gangsters and thugs that they have around them will do gangster and thug things if necessary, so they don't have to do it. They all insist that this is real. So we cannot compare this to things that we know are not real, like movies and TV shows, because the artists insist that everything they're telling you is the truth. And they will even go as far as to do some of these things, even if it's not who they really are, to make sure that you know that what they're doing is for real. I mean, we saw this happen with Biggie and Tupac. We've seen it happen with a whole lot of artists insisting that they were gangsters. Then people who are actually gangsters start coming around them, and they ended up getting done to them what usually happens to gangsters. You either end up incarcerated or you end up dead. And we've seen this happen over and over and over again. And to not give credit, for lack of a better term, to the material that we're putting out, our artistry, is disingenuous. We got to hold everything accountable. The biggest problem we have in our community, again, is a lack of two-parent homes. That's the biggest problem. You know what the second biggest problem is in the black community? And this is the one we really need to talk about. Because if you're a single mom, a black mom, and you have kids, and the dad ain't around, it ain't really much that anyone can do to manufacture bringing the dad back into the house. The actual dad, the biological dad, back into the house. We know it's an issue, but you can't get someone to do anything by talking to them about that situation, except get the black dad to go back home wherever he happens to be if he's around. Second biggest issue in the black community is a lack of internal accountability. Internal accountability is anathema to a lot of black folks. It's like kryptonite to a lot of black folks. We don't want to have conversations about internal accountability. As soon as someone like myself brings up internal accountability for the black community, you often start to get the pejoratives thrown at you. Oh, well, you're just trying to say things that appease white people, or you must be a MAGA supporter or a Donald Trump voter, or what's another one? You're just caping up for white people. What is any of that? What does any of that have to do with black internal accountability? And that's the exact fucking point. Black internal accountability is about what black people need to say to other black people so that we stop the bullshit in our own communities. But as soon as somebody brings it up, first thing the people who go against them say is something that has nothing to do with the black community. That's a deflection. You're changing the subject to something that you want to feel good about emotionally, but ignoring the actual point, which is black people need to be holding each other accountable. Jesse Jackson, again, he said it in the 90s. I feel relieved when I see a white person walking behind me at night, because I know the white person is not going to be a threat to me. But if I see a black person, then I'm concerned. He said this in 1993. He told a bunch of black prisoners, I'm going to close the prison. All you got to do is don't do anything that's going to get you back in prison when you get out of prison. And people weren't excited to hear that. We don't have internal accountability. As soon as someone comes around talking internal accountability, they get shouted down. In the black community, that's what happens. Those of you who are not black, listen to this. If someone comes in your community talking self-accountability, everybody wants to sit and hear exactly what it is, and let's go implement it tomorrow. In the black community, we don't have those conversations because nobody wants to do it. Black people don't want to hold other black people accountable. I mean, they built the statue for George Floyd. Now, here's what I said then about George Floyd, and here's what I say about him now. To be a hero, and usually statues get built for heroes, to be a hero, you must be consciously and intentionally doing something to uplift a certain group of people. Two key words, consciously and intentionally. Was George Floyd consciously and intentionally trying to uplift the community or help anyone? No, he was not. What happened to him probably shouldn't have happened that way. He did some things that led to it, and the officers did some things that led to it as well. We're not going to go into depth into that. I've talked about that plenty of times already. But he was not consciously nor intentionally trying to help the community, any community, let alone the black community. So to build a statue for him is ridiculous. Because, again, he wasn't doing it on purpose. Everybody else who has a statue was on purpose trying to do the thing that they have a statue for. He wasn't on purpose saying, hey, let me go get a cop to take my life today so I can get a statue built for me. I don't think that was his goal that day. I think we all can agree to that. So to build a statue for him is not so. It's not even so much about George Floyd here. It's the ridiculousness of what's going on in the black community that he got a statue built for him, but you don't hear people saying, let's go build a statue for Clarence Thomas, who consciously and intentionally tried to make himself a high-level individual and achieved it and has done it for many years. He doesn't get anything from these same black people who want to build a statue for Floyd wouldn't build anything for Clarence Thomas. They wouldn't even shake the guy's hand if they saw him. This is what's going on in our community. Those who don't know, Clarence Thomas is a justice on the Supreme Court. There are many black people who get mad at me for saying what I'm saying just because black people are allegedly not supposed to call each other out on our own bullshit. That's what self-accountability means. And for those of you who are not familiar with my work, let me remind you of where I come from. My background is as a professional athlete. And in the sports world, we have locker rooms. You know what goes on in a locker room on a sports team? Everybody gets held accountable. No one is above reproach. No one. The star of the team, the guy at the end of the bench, no one is above reproach. If you screw up, you're going to get called out not only by your coaches, you're going to get called out by your teammates. And everybody gets held accountable. That's the reason why sports is such a strong builder and revealer of character, especially for young men. Because where you get held accountable, regardless of what you do, because everything is based on performance. Regardless of who you are, you're judged on what you do because everything is based on performance. It's not based on personal opinions. Of course, people have opinions, but it's based on performance. And if you don't do your job, you get called out. That's accountability. That's the reason why sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy you will ever see in life. And if you have a young male in your life, he should have some experience in sports, some kind of sport, because that's where he's going to be held accountable by other men. A woman cannot hold a young man accountable the way he needs to be held accountable by a man. It can't and it won't happen. The woman doesn't have the capability of doing this. She can't instill in a young man what a man can instill in a young man. So even if you have a young black child who doesn't have a father around, you could at least send him to a sports experience so he can get male accountability from a male who has no need to appease him and will tell him what he needs to hear from a male perspective. Again, there's only so much a woman can say to a man. He ain't hearing it in the same way if he doesn't get it from a man. This is the reason why we have a problem in our communities. We don't hold each other to account, and you can't even call black people out for something that is so obvious. So me pointing out something that is clearly obvious. Everybody knows this. Even if you're not black, you know what I'm talking about here today. You are, as a black person, call this out. A bunch of black people are going to come to shout you down and stop you from talking about it and attack you on a personal level because they disagree with your point. Or they don't like the fact that you're making the point. They don't actually disagree with the point. They disagree with the fact that you're making the point. They just don't want the point to be made in the first place. Any group, organization, or family, or any other entity that performs at a high level consistently has a high level of strict internal accountability. This is an absolute fact. There are no exceptions. I'll say it again. Any group, entity, organization, community, or family, or business, or anything else that performs at a high level consistently, I guarantee you they have a strict code of internal accountability involved. Guaranteed. There's no way you can perform at a high level consistently without internal accountability. Now, how can I prove that? There's a scientific law known as the law of entropy. Law of entropy states that every entity, every person, every organism is always moving into a state of increased disorder and chaos. That's the natural state for any entity, is always to become more disorderly and more chaotic. What does that mean? That means if you take a person and don't have them do anything intentionally to improve or get better, they naturally, without trying, get worse. That's what entropy means. If you don't try to get better, you naturally get worse. There is no such thing as just staying the same. You either get better or you get worse. You're getting smarter, you're getting dumber, you're growing or you're dying, you're building or destroying. This is the law of entropy. So when you hear these phrases, that's a reflection of the law of entropy, just stated in more common terms. Give you an example. If you have a house and you never cut the grass, you got a lawn out front, you never cut the grass, what happens to your front lawn? It starts to look like nobody even lives in the house, right? Because you get all kinds of weeds. The grass is looking all crazy. And if you live in a community, the homeowners association going to knock on your door like, yo, you got to do something about that grass. That's part of the laws over here. Or we're going to kick you out. Or we're going to keep fining you. If you do nothing, the grass gets worse, right? Your lawn just starts looking crazy. If all of you listening to this, you all have teeth, right? Y'all got teeth in your mouth. Okay, if you don't brush your teeth or floss your teeth for a month straight, what's going to happen to your teeth? All right, everybody knows the answer. All right, you know the answer. If you go one day without brushing your teeth, you can feel the difference, right? Those of you who brush your teeth every day and floss every day, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You naturally get worse if you don't try to get better. If you do not, all of you has a physical body who's listening to me right now. If you don't go to the gym or do any type of exercise, whether you're doing it in your living room, you take a walk around the neighborhood, you go to the gym and do CrossFit, whatever. If you don't do any type of exercise at all, you just live your life with no exercise whatsoever, what happens to your body? Everybody knows the answers to these questions. All right. I'm giving you all this to help you understand. This is the law of entropy. Without doing anything, you do absolutely nothing, things get worse. And in our community, we do absolutely nothing when it comes to accountability. Now, why am I bringing up entropy when it comes to accountability? Because accountability is a form of structure, is a form of discipline, and it's an engagement in defending and upholding your principles and your standards. All these words are interchangeable in this context. Why? Because these are the things that stave off entropy. Again, if every Saturday you go out and cut the grass and you mow the lawn at your house, what is that? That is a process. That's a structure that you keep in place that does what? It staves off the entropy of your front lawn. If you go to the gym every day and work out, yes, you may be trying to get yourself in great shape and get a six-pack, and maybe you want to run a marathon in 6 months, and maybe you play a sport. Maybe you're doing it for those reasons, but at the same time, without even thinking about it, that is a form of structure that staves off entropy when it comes to your physical body. The reason why, if you see a man walking around, he has a six-pack abs. The reason he has six-pack abs is because there's a structure that keeps him making the right decisions in the kitchen and going to the gym consistently. So he stays off the entropy of having a beer belly. You understand? You see a man with a beer belly, that is physical entropy. That is the natural state of getting worse without doing anything else because he doesn't have any principles or structures in place, or at least he's not engaging them in order to keep the entropy from setting in. You see a person who is physically out of shape, that is entropy because they're not doing anything to stop it from happening. It just happens on its own. You don't have to try. So any of you listen to this, for you to understand this, if you want to get worse in life, if you want your life to get worse, you want your relationships to get worse, you want your finances to get worse, you want your physical health to get worse, you want your mindset to get worse, you want any part of your life to get worse, you don't have to do anything to make it worse. Just don't do anything. You're going to get worse naturally. This is a scientific law, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't make this up. I wish I did, because then I would definitely give myself credit, but I didn't make it up. But I did come up with the way of explaining it in a way that all of you can understand, even if you're not a scientist, which I am not. If you do nothing, you get worse. Structure, principles, discipline, accountability, organization, processes, all of these things, you know what they do? They stave off entropy. They build a fence around your situation so that entropy can't come in. That's what they do. So when you have no internal accountability, your organization is going to get worse. I say all that to say this. The black community, the United States of America as a whole, I'm not saying every single black person, but as a whole, we have no internal accountability. That's why things keep getting worse, because there's no internal accountability. And anytime somebody comes around and tries to implement internal accountability, they get pushed back from black people saying, no, we don't want to hear that. Stop saying that. And they come up with some reason to make it to discredit you rather than to actually address your point. Because if they actually address the point, there's no pushback. If people understood the law of entropy, most people don't understand this law. And this is the point. This is the reason why I got to keep talking about it. Anywhere you don't have standards and principles that are being upheld, anywhere you don't have them, you get entropy. And again, there are no exceptions to this. I'll give you one more example, and then we'll get to the questions. Then I'm going to run to the restroom. Then we'll get to the questions. Second grade classroom. One day, the teacher doesn't come. A substitute teacher walks into the room. What happens to that classroom that day? When the substitute teacher walks into the room of a bunch of second graders, everybody knows the answer. The class becomes a zoo that one day. For that one day, the classroom is a zoo. Why is the classroom a zoo for that one day? Is the classroom a zoo for that one day because these kids are just inherently bad kids? Are they just terrible kids? These are just poorly behaved, no home training type of kids? No, because the day before, they were all sitting at the desk with their hands folded and doing everything the teacher said. But today, since there's no teacher or the main teacher's not there, a substitute walks in, all of a sudden these kids are acting like they have no sense whatsoever. And then the very next day, main teacher comes back. The main teacher was sick for one day, but now she's back. Main teacher walks into the room the very next day. Those same kids who were acting as if they had no sense whatsoever yesterday with the substitute, now they're sitting back at the desk with their hands folded and doing everything the teacher says. What is that? That is the law of entropy at work. That when you remove the structure and you remove the accountability, all of a sudden you get chaos and disorder. And as soon as you put the structure and accountability back in place, the chaos and disorder disappear. And in our community, Black community in the United States of America, there is no structure. There's no accountability, and principles and standards are not being upheld. That's why we get chaos and disorder. And the craziest part about all this is not that there's no one in the world who understands this. I'm not the only one in the world who understands what I just explained, maybe in my language, but I'm not the only one who understands the general concept. The issue is that nobody wants to talk about it. That's the issue. The issue is not that it exists. The issue is that nobody wants to talk about it. Therefore, no one wants to talk about it. We can't do anything about it. Therefore, nothing happens, and therefore we get more chaos. This is just the world in general. In a bad neighborhood, you got entropy. Nobody takes care of anything. Nobody picks up the trash off the ground. Nobody cares if you just piss on the steps somewhere. Nobody cares if there are broken windows. And a bad neighborhood, you can tell just by walking around and looking at it. Just look at the neighborhood, look at the way things look. You can tell it's a bad neighborhood. In a nice neighborhood, how you know a neighborhood is nice? You can just drive through a nice neighborhood and not see any human beings. Everybody's in their house. You don't see a single human. You can tell it's a nice neighborhood. Why? Because the lawns are all manicured. There's no trash on the ground. You don't see anybody walking around acting as if they don't have any sense. There are no broken windows. There's no graffiti on the walls. Everything looks clean and neat and nice and looks like somebody's taking care of it. And when you see manicured lawns, house after house after house after house, you know that's not natural, right? You know that there's no grass that just grows like that by itself. Everybody knows that, right? You know somebody's mowing that lawn on a consistent basis. And they're all doing it. That's why every house looks exactly the same. That's when you have structure and accountability in a community. You can tell without talking to a single human. And when there is none, you can tell. Graffiti on the walls, broken window, malt liquor bag and bottle on the ground. There's somebody pissing in the street. There's random stray dogs and cats running around, looking all scruffy and nasty. The lawns aren't manicured. You can tell. This house looks like it's abandoned. That one's abandoned too. There's an abandoned car here on the corner that's been sitting there for 6 months. You can tell without talking to a human whether something is organized or if it's not organized. In our community, again, I'm not saying all Black people, of course, but because we have no internal accountability, we're getting chaos. And as soon as somebody decides to talk about it, then possibly, situation can be fixed. All this said, folks, now we're going to open it up for discussion. I'm sure there are some people who agree. I'm sure there are some who disagree. I'm open to all of it, as long as you come correct. Let me run to the restroom real quick. This is going to take me 90 seconds. Let me run to the restroom, and then we're going to open the conversation up for discussion back and forth. I'm going to read your comments and response. And give me 90 seconds. After these messages, we will get into the back and forth. I'll be right back. All right, here we go. Let me see what we got over on. Didn't see anything on Facebook or Rumble Studio. One thing about Rumble Studio, sometimes the page refreshes on me, and if there was comments, then I lose them. I don't think I saw any coming in. So let's see what we got over on TikTok. Good morning to my moderators. Thank you for moderating here today. Those of you who are in here, pin any comments that you see are good, and I'll respond to them immediately. But otherwise, I'm just going to be scrolling through from as far back as I can get to, and I'm going to read the comment out loud and get to it. Cindy said Jasmine Crockett is another one. She's an amateur race hustler. She's not quite there yet. She's trying, but she ain't there yet. Jasmine Crockett she's more of a political hustler. Her thing is not so much race. Her thing is more politics. But she seems to me to be a more of a political puppet, being told what to do by whoever has funded her background. And some of you know who's funded her. Guy whose initials are GS. but she's not going anywhere politically. She's going to be where she's at. She's not going any further than that. She's not a serious player. Mark says the issue, racism is taught at home on all sides. What you say behind closed doors. Okay, fair enough. But the topic here today is not really racism. Dally Mack said 100% correct. I try to have those combos with family and friends and they instantly get mad. Yes, exactly. Courtney, good morning to you. Joshua said that's a little reductive. What do you mean by that? Abby said, do you have hazel eyes? I don't know. Cindy said, that dude, what dude are you talking about? Carla said, the race baiters don't have good intentions. They are working their grift for their benefit. Well, it depends on what you mean by good intentions. I think they have good intentions, Carla. I think you don't think they do, but I think they do. So high class, well said. A lot of kids where I live have one, farm country. All right, fair enough. Nothing wrong with having one, is what you do with it. Kentrell Sims, thank you. You like the suit, thank you. Abby said, no excuse for murder. Well, sometimes there is. If a robber breaks into your house and you pull out your gun and shoot him, is that defensible? I would say yes, it is, depending on what state you live in. They're in the state of Texas. In the state of Florida, Tennessee, and others, where you are allowed to stand your ground, yes, there isn't, not even about it being an excuse, because excuse sounds like you did something wrong. That's just justification. Wildflower Annie, good morning. Cindy said where he stabbed him, he intended to kill. I don't know if he was thinking that, Cindy. I don't think he was thinking, let me kill this guy. I think he just stabbed him and he ended up killing him. I don't know if he thought about it that hard before he did it. High class said, plus I provided my kid and his girlfriend matching mace, know when to use these things and how. Okay, fair enough. Blue Skies, Nikki, number 2 gifted badge, congrats. Blue Skies said, people just do not regulate their tempers like the girl who hit the girl in the head while running. Yeah, and I see it too often in the black community. That's the reason why I'm bringing it up. Now, that was a black female. And what's crazy is she went and did a whole media thing in her town saying that she's not a violent person. She would never do something like that, when we all just saw it on video, which made it more crazy. The fact that she went out and said that and people actually stood there and listened to it as if they believed her, when we got everything she did was right there on video. Michelle Henry, good morning to you. You sent the Hi April. I never saw that one before, so thank you for the unique badge gift. John Tierney, good morning. Mark Garcia said, bet the internet input to the offender has something to do with it too. What do you mean by internet input? What do you mean? Bonafide Southern RN, good morning to you. Thank you for the rose. Carla, good to see you here, as usual. Robert, thank you for the follow. Bonafide Southern, thank you for the goats. Lady D. Jen, thanks for the follow. High class, well said. Integrity is not the same. Street justice and rules are non-existent. You mean back from the 90s? If that's what you're talking about, then yes, I agree. Sweet Rob, thanks for the follow. High class white trash said, a hard ER. Love the descriptions. Just like the word with the hard ER. Well, what I'm saying is that's like, for a lot of black people, that's like the worst thing somebody who's white could say to you. I'm saying just because they said it legally does not justify you getting physical with them. Even though I understand, doesn't legally justify it. That's what I'm saying. Cindy says some households are better off with no father if he is a POS and the mother says, I can't live without. Okay, I understand anecdotally that may be true, Cindy. I can't argue with an anecdotal situation, but we're talking big picture here, Cindy. We're talking about the overall community of black people is better off if we have more 2-parent households. I understand that some parents are not qualified to be parents. They're not in good shape to be parents. I get that. But in the big picture, what you're saying here anecdotally does not discount the overall point. It's kind of like saying, if I say college graduates make more money than high school graduates, and then someone says, well, hey, this person graduated from high school and they're a billionaire, it doesn't mean that you're wrong with your anecdote, but that does not discredit the overall point that college graduates make more money than high school graduates. It's still true. Cindy said they need to charge him as an adult. If they brought back death penalty, some of this would stop. Well, we'll see. We need to get all the details. We don't know all the details yet. So I'm talking about this because it's a current event, but we don't know all the details of the specific situation. That's why this live here today is not really about that situation, like that kid stabbing that kid. It's not really about that. I'm just using that as a canvas to talk about a bigger issue, because we don't know all the details yet. Usually in the first 48 hours of something like this, we know like 10% of what actually happened. We don't know the backgrounds. We don't know what got said. With no investigation has happened yet. This is all very, very fresh. Blue Sleep said, despite representing a smaller percentage of the population, yeah, I think you're talking about the stats I mentioned. User said, I'm digging this talking info. Thank you. Street said, if a white person says it with an A, I'm crashing out. Well, you shouldn't crash out, Streets. Depends on who that white person is. Depends on where you're crashing out. And you got to be careful crashing out because you're gonna be the one that ends up with a wrecked vehicle if you crash out, if you follow my metaphor. Well, I'm following your metaphor. I know what you mean by crashing out, but your car gets wrecked when you crash out. So be careful. Kuya bin Yashara, thank you for the follow. Recruited Quarrels, Mall, thank you. Thank you. Bonafide, Southern RN, thanks for the hearts. Sugar, good morning. Transplant Warrior J, thanks for the rose. AJ says, amen. Thank you for spreading great knowledge. Thank you. Carla says, say that again for the people in the back. Is the culture. Yes, the culture, not the color. Because there are black people who don't follow this culture, and there are white people who do follow the culture. So it's not the color that inherently makes you do things. It's the culture that you follow that has you doing things. Goods Souvenir says, so are you helping the people or just talking about the people? Well, let's see what we got here. God's Souvenir. So we got two logical fallacies in one statement. We got the straw man, which you start with the word so. This is often a tell for the straw man when you start with the word so in response to something that somebody else says. And then you got the false binary where you're giving me only two options, helping the people or just talking about the people. Well, what I'm doing right now is discussing a current event. So that's a third option that you didn't give me as a choice here. So you presented a false binary here. So two logical fallacies. Well done. I don't think you meant to do that. What I'm doing is talking about a situation, and then I'm drawing it to the bigger picture issue. So it depends, God Souvenir, to answer your straw man false binary question. Am I helping the people? You tell me. Am I helping the people by pointing out that we don't have internal accountability? Or am I just talking about the people by saying we have no internal accountability? Further, I don't know if this is your first time coming across my work. I have been offering accountability material when it comes to discipline, mindset, confidence, personal initiative, mental toughness to people of all colors through the internet. Anybody of any color can consume it for the last 20 years. So what I would suggest you do is check my receipts. I got plenty of them. I got more receipts than you can read. High Class says, thank you for speaking on culture versus color. I keep on talking on it, but people don't want to hear it. Well, even if I'm talking on it, a lot of people don't want to hear it. And I told you why. We don't have internal accountability. Kate M said, God bless you for coming so far. You made something very great of your life. Well, thank you, Kate. AB86, thanks for the follow. Ace Balfazar. Enemy of the State said, no dad at home is a major problem. Yes, it is a big problem. Fifology said, top 5 books for us to begin in educating ourselves that you recommend. Fifology, educating yourself on what? Give me more context, because you can educate yourself on a million different subjects, some of which I may not be able to recommend you a book, but depending on what subject we're talking, then I can give you a better answer. So give me what topic we're talking. Abby said, key 2-parent home, especially father. Yes, you need a 2-parent home. Usually if the dad is at home, the mom's there. Usually that's the case. If the dad's there, the mom's usually there. Yes, there are a lot of examples of men being single parents with just the man and he has custody of the kids, but as much more often is the woman with custody by herself and no dad, usually. Honorable Trait says they act like their mother. That's the problem. Well, you don't have a choice but to act like your mom when that's the only role model you've had. That's the issue. Is a young man is raised by just a mom. He has no choice but to develop some traits of a female because that's his example, a female. Erica Farrow, good morning to you. Abby said, simp dad might be the same as a single mother home need alpha male. Well, it depends on how you define alpha male. But if you just got a mom and a dad there, that's better than just having a mom. Cindy says some households are better off. I already responded to that one. Abby said, how can he possibly get exonerated? It's happened. It's happened. It depends on the case. We need the details. First of all, Abby, as I said earlier, we don't know all the details of what actually happened here. What if he can argue through his lawyer that he felt physically threatened because it was two of them, or this boy was just bigger than him, or this boy was just seemed a threat, and they make this argument, and it depends on if they can convince the jury. So he could very well get exonerated. I'm not saying he should. I don't know enough details to even offer an opinion, and it doesn't even matter what my opinion is. All that matters is what they can convince the jury of, or even the state's attorney, because they didn't even bring charges yet. This just happened like 2 days ago. So first of all, we got to see what the charge is, and then can the prosecution make a strong enough case to actually get him convicted of anything? And all that has to play out in court. So Yes, he could very well get exonerated. I mean, how did OJ get exonerated? A bunch of people have been exonerated who a lot of other people thought they shouldn't have been, but they got off. So, hey, how did George Zimmerman get exonerated? A lot of people thought he was guilty. So there's plenty of examples. User said he's giving hypotheticals. Well, of course I give hypotheticals. Why not? Hypotheticals are good ways to illustrate points. What about me? Thank you for the follow. Butterfly Howard, good morning. Good to see you. Shane Deasy says white male violence is more prevalent. Look at the statistics. And you mentioned J6. Well, J6 is anecdotal, so it has nothing to do with it. And white male violence is more prevalent. What statistics we talking, Shane Deasy? So you got to be careful when you say look at statistics, because it's very easy to mislead people with statistics. You can just pick and choose which stats you want to show and then leave out the ones that you don't want to show. So if we're going to say look at the statistics, we got to look at several things. First of all, the stats that you're referring to, whatever they are. Secondly, I would ask you the following question as a critical thinker. Anytime somebody shows me a stat to prove a point, I'm going to ask them, if someone strongly disagreed with you and they want to make you like a complete fool, what stats would they show to discredit everything that you just said? And I would expect you to have an answer to that question. If you don't have an answer to that question, then I'm taking what you say with a grain of salt, because you have an intention of making me think one way. I want to see the stats that would discredit and disprove your position. And you should know what they are if you're a critical thinker. And as far as what you actually said, white male violence is more prevalent. I'm talking specifically murders. I'm not talking just violence, period, because there's a lot of violent crime that doesn't get reported. No murder gets ignored. If there's a murder, that goes down as a stat. Now, violent crime, there could be domestic abuse happening in the house right next door to me, and it never gets reported because the woman never calls the cops. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it also is not a stat, so it doesn't show up in the stats. So you got to be very careful when we talking stats. It's very easy to deceive people with statistics, and most people don't understand what I just explained right there, but everybody understands it now that I've explained it. So you got to be, again, take it with a grain of salt when someone tries to show you a stat and convince you of something that they want you to believe. Abby said, do I think it was premeditated? Based on what we know, Abby, I don't think so. I think it was kind of what they call a bang-bang situation. Something just happened. It's kind of like I'm in my car driving, somebody is tailgating me too much, and we end up arguing, we get in a fist fight. Was it premeditated? Did I get in the car thinking, all right, I'm going to fight somebody on the road today? Probably not. It's just a reaction to what happened in the moment. So I doubt it was premeditated, but we don't know yet. Again, we got to get all the information. Andrew P said, drill artists like Youngboy and Bloodhound Lil Jeff. I never heard of those guys, but I know drill music. I know what you're talking about. Abby said he purposely sat under another school's tent, not his school's. Well, we don't know that. How you know that, Abby? Only way we know that is if he said it. We can't judge his intent. Well, all we can judge is his actions for now. And we still need to know the story behind everything that happened. Because right now, the only story we've gotten comes from the boy who passed away. He was a twin. So his twin brother was there when the whole thing happened. So the only thing we know about is what the twin brother said. But we need more information before we can say why it happened. We only know a little bit. Carla said, I'm a fan of some of the rap from the 70s and 80s, less of the 90s, practically none of today. I've heard people from in your bracket say the same thing, that they liked rap until all the gangster rap and the violent rap and the criminal rap and the street rap came in, and then they stopped listening. My dad was like that too. He listened to a lot of rap through the 80s, but then when all the gangster rappers came in, he listened to a couple of them, but most of them he never liked. Even though my dad's a big music fan, he didn't like any of those guys. Jeff said, what does music have to do with white supremacy that causes the conditions? Jeff, you really going to do this today? You want to come in with that? Starting says the music industry is very intentional. Well, yes, they are. That's why they make money. You got to be intentional to make money. Mikey Brim, thank you for the follow. Christina Page said we need stronger dads at home. Yes, we do. Everybody needs it. Cindy said there would have been riots at that school. Yes, of course. We know. Butterfly said Black Lives Matter should be saying something. Well, Black Lives Matter is going to say anything. Black Lives Matter does not care about black life. They care about white blame. That's what they should be called. They should be called White Blame Matters, because that's all they actually got activated for, and it worked. As a business model, it worked excellently. They made a ton of money in the summer of 2020. Black Lives Matter should be called White Blame Matters, because that is more reflective of what they actually do. Manny, I appreciate you. Abby said, BLM, no money-making ghost. I don't know what you mean by that. Rebecca said they only come out when it's benefit to them. Well, who's them? You mean the organization, right? Not the black people, because if it was for black people, they would come out when it's black on black violence. They never talk about it. John said BLM will only appear to fundraise. Well, they're pretty much done now. They did it. They did what they need to do. They got their nut and they're out of there. They got exactly what they needed in the summer of 2020. They ate really good that year. Andrew said they put lyrics in alluding to actual things they've done. Well, things that they claim they did. You don't always know if they actually did it or not. Someone can sound very convincing when they're just talking. Carlos said that's the point. They are not our representatives. They are the ones picked to be our representatives. Yes, I agree. Cindy, congrats on the badge. Kingsley Jones said black MAGA leader in a suit. Why do people keep misspelling the word suit? What is going on? All right, we got an epidemic going on in America, folks. Those of you in the TikTok comments or any of the other comments, please help me out. Why does this keep happening? Why do people keep misspelling the word suit? Every day somebody leaves a comment trying to, I guess, insult me by saying you're in a suit, but they misspell the word suit. There is no E in the word suit, ladies and gentlemen. All right, suit is S-U-I-T. There's no E. You put an E at the end, it becomes suite. That's like my hotel suite. There is no E in suit. All right, this is really perplexing me. I might have to do a whole live on this. All right, shall I do a whole live on this? Everybody keeps misspelling this word. Every day, somebody misspells the word suit. There is no E in suit. All right, where are y'all getting this from? This is the educational department. See, this is why we got to get rid of the Department of Education. All right, how do y'all people keep misspelling this word? So anyway, Kingsley Jones, he says black MAGA leader in a suite. He meant to say suit, trying to legitimate white supremacists. So first of all, this is grammatically incorrect on several different levels, Kingsley. All right, you're trying to ad hominem me, and you failed. And you don't know how to spell. I already called all those things out. So please try again. Manny said, drill rap is popular with our youth, is more violent than gangster rap. Yeah, I know. I've heard. Seesaw said, Tupac was an art school kid from Baltimore, an actor who did exactly what you described. Yeah, I've seen some of those videos about Tupac, or those videos of Tupac. Dally Mac says, spelling bee Fridays. Yeah, this should be an easy one. But yeah, Tupac, I've seen some of those things with Tupac that who knows if he was acting. But Tupac's whole thing of being a gangster was acting. He's one of the greatest actors I've ever seen because he was very convincing. So let's see. Kingsley said, this man has zero morality. His only morality is money. And if to sell his kids and people back to really, Kingsley, that's what you came up with? Please come with something that you want to, if you want to challenge my point, come with something. You got to come with something better than that, though. Come on. Manny says, started in Chicago. Yeah, I know about the drill music thing. God's Souvenir says, so like I said, are you helping or just broadcasting news? Well, again, you just did another false binary. You're giving me two options. Don't limit my options, God's Souvenir. I got as many options as I like. Stop offering me two options because it's neither one of those. Lucky said he didn't deserve to be murdered. Well, that's probably true, given what we know. KBOS Radio Phoenix said they can't accept the truth in this live feed. Well, they're accepting it so far. Justin said, you are telling the truth no one wants to hear. All right, fine. Some people think I'm telling a lie. So it's interesting way people frame things. D. Hay said, this sounds good, but do you understand that it's a bit more complex than this? What part are you referring to, D. Hay? I talked about a lot of different things. Abby said, amen, self-accountability. Yes, we all need that. Lucky Girl said, Clarence Thomas is an asset of the country that starts with the letter R, whose name I can't say. Well, Lucky Girl, here's the thing. Obviously, you're not a fan of Clarence Thomas. The issue is, with what you said here, is that it's become overused to put these same labels on anything that you disagree with. So let me give you a couple of examples. If a person is talking about current events and someone who's on the political left doesn't like them, they say, well, this person is grifting. Stop using this term because it's lost its value. Another one is people say, if I'm saying something politically and you don't like it, they say, well, you're a MAGA supporter or you're a Trump voter. Those, again, overused, doesn't have value anymore. If you don't like someone in politics, you say, well, they're an asset and they obviously work for the R country. Again, it doesn't have any value anymore. We know it's a pejorative. It sounds childish. If you disagree with the concept of Clarence Thomas, say what you disagree with. But putting these labels on them as if this is doing anything doesn't do anything. It just shows, it says a whole lot more about you than it says about Clarence Thomas. If you have something of substance to say about Clarence Thomas, say it. I'll read it out loud and I'll respond to it. But if that's all you got, come with something better than that. This is an adult conversation. Carlos says, well, Thurgood Marshall gets the statue first. Okay, fair enough. Butterfly said, excellent example of standards. We have to have standards for success. Yes, we got to have standards, period. Not even for success, just for baseline behavior. We just need baseline behavior standards. Success is a higher level thing. D.A. says, you sound like Your wife and friends are white too. They make you feel cozy. All right. Again, that's what you came up with, D. That's the best thing you can come up with. You see all these comments I'm reading, and you finally got a chance to have your comment read out loud, and that's what you came up with. Again, this is an adult conversation. You got to come with something better than this. Lauren said, builder and revealer of character. Love it. Yes, that's always been said about sports. Ashy Ray 136, very great insights. Thank you. Mike said, this man knows what he's talking about. Get involved with the kids, hold them to a higher level. Yes. KBOS said, he is so right about entropy. My science degree has proven this over and over again. All right, that's great. So there, you got someone with a science degree verifying entropy. Appreciate it. KBOS. Let's see. That's my cue said exactly. The lack of accountability is frustrating. Yes, it is. Michael Buckaloo, 100% fact. Thank you. In so much too. Thanks for the follow. Erica Farrow, congrats on the badge. Jay Singleton said, I don't think Clarence Thomas is a Thurgood Marshall on any level. He has only lifted himself up. Okay. All right. Some people may have that opinion about Clarence Thomas. That's fine if that's the opinion that you have. It's better than calling him an asset of the R country. I'm not going to argue with the opinion if that's how you feel about him. Fair enough. Line said, law of what? Can someone put the word entropy in the comments so L-I-N Linley can get that entropy? E-N-T-R-O-P-Y. Entropy. Carlos said, black community is worse now than it was in the 60s. No community. Yes, that's true. KBOS says, this is way over their heads. Ever talk to someone without an understanding of context? Yes, on the internet every day. KBOS radio, what do you expect? You get on the internet and start talking about a hot button issue, you're going to get a lot of people who have no understanding of context, or they pretend to not have understanding of context because they just want to disagree with you. Welcome to the internet. This is normal. So that's why it doesn't bother me when people do these things. That's why I'm reading these comments. I'm used to this. I've been reading comments on the internet for 20 years. So I have seen it all. This is just when people disagree. People in the comments really getting mad at the truth. Yeah, I mean, it's normal. This is the internet, ladies and gentlemen. What do you expect? When you come to the internet, this is what you get. So you got to accept all of it. Carlos said, you need a bigger platform, a louder mic. We need to hear this. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe TikTok will help me by putting me on the FYP more often. Road to Rehab. Follow the creator. Thank you. Road to Rehab. Butterfly said, yes, that's why I always say you have to have a plan for your life or you plan to fail. That's correct. 100%. King's Works over on Instagram said, what are ways that you think all black people should be held accountable? Well, first of all, when somebody in the black community is doing something that's destructive to the community, they need to be held accountable and told, yo, you're doing something that's making the community look bad. Get your shit together. It starts right there. And again, this is the reason why you need 2-parent homes. If you have 2-parent homes, then a young boy who's behaving as if he don't have any sense, he eventually gets to an age where his mother cannot control him, but a father can control him. And the father can say, yo, you need to check yourself, pull your pants up, start acting like you have some sense, show respect to your mother, show respect to your teachers, show respect for the community. That can happen in the house. So it starts there. When someone's doing the wrong thing, they got to be checked as soon as they start doing it, not after they've been doing it for 10 years. That's where it starts. So hopefully that answers your question, King's Works. Carla said, class is out of control because the teacher is gone. Yes, exactly. Second grade was Mr. Scott. He was 6'6". Yes, it starts in the home. Let's talk about it. That's right, Carla. You got it. Sassy Sonia, thank you for the follow. Robert Steele, thank you for sharing the live. Thanks to everybody who's been sharing the live. Those of you who are watching on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. The replays of all of these lives are on my YouTube. My YouTube camera is over here. Shout out to the people watching on YouTube and Rumble and X right now. I'm sure some people are hate watching me on X right now. And on Instagram, my Instagram link is also on my profile, and my Instagram camera is over here. This mic is going to my Instagram. Usually my clips come from my Instagram. That's why the Instagram is directly in front of me. So let's see. M. Bayer Bauer said, Mr. Bayer Bauer, very important topics. We should talk about it, but that's why we're doing it. Bob Cadet, thanks for the follow. Luna 3D said, how are you? I'm doing great, Luna. Actually getting a little hungry. I'm going to eat lunch as soon as I'm done with this. Ruby says, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you. Jay Blue says, is it hot or cold? What are you talking about? One Nation Under God said, let me guess, Black Republican. Are you talking about me? I have no political affiliation. I am black, though. You got that part right, but I have no political affiliation. Andrew said, it's sad these kids are listening to Bloodhound, Lil Jeff, who took out 10. To what extent can you attribute certain policies to issues we have today? Well, that would be a whole conversation that I've kind of touched on some of these in the past. Well, one of them I will say is welfare contributed to more single-parent homes because it incentivized women to be home by themselves. If there was a man in the house, you couldn't get the welfare. So I'll give you that one. To Amber and Beyond, good morning. Good to see you. God Souvenir said, so my question is, what are you doing to help the situation? I think I already answered that. And let's see, Charles Milligan, thank you for the follow. Fifeology said, top 5 books. Already asked you for context on that one. Sassy Sonia just said, just came across your page. Love listening to your topic. I agree your suit fits you well. Thank you, Sonia. I appreciate it. Senior said he took life regardless. Yeah, he did. So that's why he gets to go to trial. All right, everybody needs to understand that in the United States, even if you are charged with the craziest of crimes that look like it's obvious that you are guilty, you still get your day in court. Everybody gets their day in court. We need to get all the information. He's going to have a lawyer, and his lawyer is going to try to save him. And that's the way the system works. So he still gets his day in court just like everybody else. And again, we don't even have all the information yet. This just happened like less than 2 days ago. Let's see. Cindy said, no excuses for murder in that situation. Well, again, we need to know the whole situation first, Cindy, before we can say that. It seems like that. What you're saying is true, but we don't know. We don't have all the information yet. So let's not jump to any conclusions just yet. Mark Anthony, thank you for the follow. Shane Deasy said, no, I already answered that one. You're welcome, Abby. Connie Mathis, good morning to you. Let's see. Shane Deasy said, white male J6 enough said. Not really. Not really. That's an anecdotal situation. And we had to talk about the bigger picture of the entire country. J6 was a couple. How many people got charged on January 6th? 1,500 people. Our country is 330 million people. So it's anecdotal, is not reflective of the entire country. And it was only one day, 4 years ago. So no, that is not enough said. Shane Deasy said, 2 different justice systems, one to incarcerate minorities and one allows felon POTUS. Shane Deasy, you got to come with something better than that. I mean, I get what you're saying, but we didn't heard that already. So that one has already been tried. And you see what happened in the election in 2024? That one has already failed. You got to come with something better than that. I get what you're saying, but I mean, at this point, how many times are people going to keep saying it? It's over. Abby said the glove didn't fit. Yeah, exactly. But a lot of people still think that he was guilty. There's people to this day who think he was guilty. So even though the glove didn't fit, he had a good lawyer. That's the reason why he won. F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, Rob Kardashian. All right, that's the reason why O.J. Simpson won. He had good lawyers. Melissa said, can you do a brief overview of the story you're talking about? Came in late today. Yes, what happened, Melissa, was that in Frisco, Texas, there was some kids at a track meet, and a young black kid was sitting under a tent that he allegedly was not supposed to be sitting under. So a white kid came up to him who was supposed to be under the tent. He said to the black kid, you're not supposed to be here. The black kid basically pushed back against this assertion. They got into a bit of an argument. And then the white kid reached for the black kid's backpack, according to the white kid's brother. And then the black kid, they get into a physical scuffle. The black kid stabs the white kid. The white kid's dead. This happened 2 days ago. So on X, a lot of people are talking about this. So that's why I bumped my planned topic for today, which is supposed to be about Trump. And it's supposed to be, what was I going to talk about? Oh, supporting Trump is against your self-interest. That was going to be the topic today, but it got bumped off the front page by this topic. So that one is moved, as of today, it is moved tentatively to Monday. So Melissa, that's the topic. Andrew said, people who live in the city know what's going on. The lyrics are true. Andrew, I get it. But the subject is not really about that. I see you saying a lot of stuff about it, but it's not about that. Amber said it's suit, y'all. Yes, please. Suit. S-U-I-T. There's no E in suit, folks. If you put an E in at the end, then it becomes sweet. It's 2 different words. All right. Yeah, it said a whole lot on spelling. Yeah, should I do a whole lot on spelling? Maybe I'm unqualified. All right. Mike said you can't spell suit if you don't own one. Yeah, that might be what it is. Cindy said autocorrect spells words. Yes, but see, sweet is a word, but it depends. I don't think people are using autocorrect yet. I think people are just typing. But if you type in S-U-I-T, then that is a word. So I don't know why. I don't think autocorrect is correcting suit to sweet. I don't think that's happening. Rose Plant said, it's not a mistake. There's a program on phones that deliberately misspells words of MAGAs. Maybe. That's funny, but I don't think that's the case. I think people just don't know how to spell the word. T. Lee said, proud of you. Thank you. Rose Plant said, phone sabotage. Maybe. Jeffrey said, law of entropy, very interesting. I'm going to use this in my next manager's meeting. Yes, it's a great concept. I'm probably going, one of my future books, I'm going to talk about it a lot. Chesapeake says, I now understand what you're saying about BLM. What do you say about the all lives matter retort? Well, and there's another law of science is that every force has an equal and opposite force. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when Black Lives Matter came out and said, well, it's all about when something happens to a black life, we got to make all this noise. There are a bunch of people who said, well, what about the lives of everybody else? What about the lives of people who are not black? They don't matter. So they said, okay, all lives matter. Black lives matter and all lives matter as well. And depending on who you ask, some people framed it as, oh, it sounds like you're going against our message of Black Lives Matter. Black lives can matter. All lives have always mattered, but black lives have seemed to not get the same attention. So black lives have gotten the short end of the stick. I can understand people being offended by hearing all lives matter when they're walking around saying Black Lives Matter. At the same time, as I just said, it's a law of the universe that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you come out and say black lives, black lives, black lives, people who are not black are going to say, well, what the hell about our life? Our life doesn't matter. And they're going to push back, especially when we saw the scam that was Black Lives Matter. They enticed people to come out and push back against them because Black Lives Matter was a scam. And we know it was a scam now. So that's how I feel about the all lives matter retort. I understand exactly why it happened. I never went around saying all lives matter. I never went around saying Black Lives Matter. I think every life does matter just as a general point. And at the same time, I can understand both sides. I can understand people who supported Black Lives Matter, why they did it, and still support them to this day. Or the concept. What happened is after the organization got outed as a scam, a bunch of people started saying, well, I support the concept. I don't support the organization. Okay, so now everybody's kind of playing that game. It's the same way that a lot of people who were staunchly supporting Kamala Harris as soon as she lost, now all of a sudden all these Democrats are quote unquote independent. Yeah, right. Now, has she won it, would they be independent? No. So it's kind of a little bit of revisionist history when it comes to BLM with folks. But I understand the retort because, again, Black Lives Matter proved themselves to not be credible. Let's just say that, for lack of a better term. Joe Byron said, nice suit, S-E-W-T. That's a better way of spelling it. At least phonetically, it sounds like you know what you're trying to say. Suits. Or it could be soats because S-E-W is so. Erica, yes, thank you for putting that entropy in there. Patsy Barrow said, your topic today was so informative for both whites and blacks. Thanks. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for the follows. Connie Mathis, James Cervone, Jenny Buchanan. Manny said, how can fathers be held accountable to be more involved in their child's life? Well, they got to be held accountable by other men. That's ultimately what it comes down to, Manny, because we already got the legal system. You got the child support. But there are some men out there who are not in their child's lives who will just pay the child support and clean their hands of the situation. The biggest thing you can do to move men to action is have them held accountable by other men who they respect. There's nothing else you can do. The government shouldn't be that involved. It needs to be other men holding men accountable who they have respect for, and then they'll listen. But if they don't have respect for the person trying to hold them accountable, they're not going to listen. Joe says, speaking common sense is why they assume you're conservative leaning. I know, which is crazy because that says to me, why do people not assume I'm liberal? If I'm speaking common sense, why don't you assume I'm liberal? Are the liberals not do they not have common sense? What's happened? So that's the part that's always perplexed me. GS, thanks for the follow. Amber and Beyond sent the Jester Cat. I don't think I've seen that one before. Thank you. Pamela Pritchett, good morning to you. Good to see you. Bayboo said, how can we stop the erasure of our history at museums, Arlington National Cemetery, schools, etc.? Well, history, first of all, is a story. And secondly, it's not erased. If you know about it, that means that it still exists, right? So it's not really being erased. Just because something is not at a museum anymore doesn't mean it didn't happen. And anybody can talk about it. That's the great thing about the internet, Bayboo, is that you can take anything that is no longer in this building and you can still talk about it on your platform. And everybody else can talk about it too. So erasure of history is an interesting concept because, first of all, history itself is a story. So everything that we know to be as quote unquote history, it might not even be true. All of it is questionable because it's just a story. Everything is a story. And really what it comes down to in the world that we live in today is just deciding which story you want to believe and which stories you don't want to believe. This is the reason why it feels like people are so divided these days, because we all have so many different sources of information. We can have completely different information and completely different stories on the exact same subject. And I got sources and you have sources, but we completely disagree. So then you think I'm a dummy and I think you're a dummy. And there's no conclusion because we don't have anyone who is like like the final arbiter that we respect as knowing the actual truth. and it's only getting worse. All right, this phenomenon is only getting worse. Artificial intelligence is going to make it even worse than it is right now. So this is not going to be solved. This is only going to get worse. It's just going to come down to who is better at articulating their point. And this is when you see those. You ever see those videos on YouTube where it's like one expert sits down and then like 20 people are all around the room and they just come up to the table and they argue for 2 minutes, and then the next person comes up and they argue. That thing is not proving anything. All it is a battle of who's better at debating. And usually the expert is better than the random people who sit down at the chair. All that is entertainment. That's not actually informing or educating anybody. And that's going to be one of the things moving forward. Who's best at articulating their point and arguing with the other person. So you can basically slam dunk on them through like social media platforms. And the other thing is, in the approach that I like to take, I don't like to try to slam dunk on people, because eventually somebody's going to slam dunk on me. And then nobody gains anything when we do that. So what I like to do is I have my opinion. I have my perspectives on things. But at the same time, I try to be measured enough to understand why somebody else has a certain perspective. Like I said, I'm not a fan of BLM. BLM was a complete scam, and they only came out to blame white people, not to actually help black people. But I understand why a lot of people supported Black Lives Matter. I understand why people support it and why people still use the phrase to this very day, and why people got mad about this situation that happened the other day with this kid getting stabbed in Texas, because they don't want it to be holding black people accountable, because they have reasons to believe that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happened in the past against black people that has not yet, quote unquote, balanced out. Therefore, you should not hold black people accountable in the present because we haven't balanced out what happened in the past. I don't agree with that frame, but I understand why somebody could believe it. So that's what I try to do. And sometimes people accept that and they appreciate it, but some people still don't like it, even though I try my best to be measured and see things from every angle. So hopefully that answers your question. Connie Mathis said, I appreciate your message. Much needed. Thank you. Let's see. Bebu said, Jay Sixers got pardoned and now Trump wants reparations for them. I don't know about any reparations. Yeah, and they did get pardoned after they spent a bunch of time in jail. Let's not forget about that part. They got pardoned after they were already convicted and already had spent some time in jail. And here's what I'll say about January 6th is that the courts that convicted and tried the people from January 6th, I believe they overcorrected based on what happened there, because January 6th, I did a whole live on this on January 6th, literally January 6th this year. I did a whole live talking about January 6th. And you can find that on my YouTube, one of my YouTube channels, is that they overcorrected, because what those people did on January 6th is that they took their fight to the one place that the government does not want the fight to be taken to. There's one thing if people are burning down their own neighborhoods. That's not good, but that's one thing. But to take the fight all the way to the people who actually make the laws, Congress, was what they did, because Congress is at the Capitol building. I don't think most people knew that Congress does all their work inside of the Capitol building. I don't know if I even knew that until January 6th, because I didn't care. But that day, they took all of their fight to the very people who make the laws. And those are the very people that you cannot challenge to their faces. And that applies to everybody. So the fact that January 6ers went right to the people who make the laws, that I think that alarmed a lot of people in the government. And on top of the fact, multiply that with the fact that they were supporting a guy that a lot of them hate, Donald Trump. And the fact that he had just been noted as the loser of the 2020 election. This is the mix of all of this together became a perfect gumbo to overcharge and over convict these people of things. So on that frame, I understand why Donald Trump pardoned them, and I don't have a problem with him pardoning those people. At the same time, the other side of it, I understand why they went after those January 6 people, because you took it to the lawmakers. These are the people who make the law. So how are you going to get a fair trial when your charge is going against the people who make laws? So it was a perfect mix of a very highly combustible situation, January 6th. And at the same time, as saying all that, I have no problem with Trump pardoning them, because I believe they all got overcharged. And they all have a stain on their names and reputations that they can't take off no matter what they do, even after that. None of them can go anywhere liberal. As soon as they get Googled, it's over. Lady Who Means Business said, I would rather listen to your first agenda, but I don't know what you're referring to there. Jenny said, maybe you should have a spelling bee on Monday. Yeah, maybe. Executive Suite, business suit. There you go. So Nikki just gave it to you. Executive Suite, business suit. That is correct. Cindy said, autocorrect changed my spelling on some. Melissa said, I thought so. My sister sent me that article yesterday. I never saw anything on the news about it. Well, I don't watch the news. I get on X. X is my news source. So on X, everybody was talking about it. And they're still talking about it right now. So it's probably a lot of stuff going on in my notifications as soon as I get back on them. Dan Buck said, so you support a scam. What scam you talking about? Lady Who Means Business said, I'm new here. Hello, what is your background? Hello, Lady Who Means Business. My background very quickly is I'm a former professional athlete, played professional basketball for almost 10 years, and I've done 4 TED Talks, created this brand called Work on Your Game. I've written 40 books, and my company is all about helping professional entrepreneurs systematize and scale their businesses from the 6-figure to the 7-figure level. You can find more out about me, Lady Who Means Business, by you can simply Google me. I'm not saying that to be tongue in cheek. Like literally, you can Google me. There's a lot of info on me out there on the internet. And I'm on every social media platform. So whichever one you like, just go type in my name. My name it should be in my profile. Let me look on TikTok. I believe my name is in my profile. My name is Dre, D-R-E, and my last name is Baldwin, B-A-L-D-W-I-N. Is it in here? No, actually, it's not. My name is Dre Baldwin. So, no, it's actually not in here. But it should be somewhere in my profile. I don't see it. It just says Work on Your Game, then Work on Your Game, because I have a business account. But that's my name. You can look up Work on Your Game. You'll find me too. Chesapeake said, I didn't know it was a scam at the time. You never know who to support anymore. Well, at the time, it didn't look like a scam because they hadn't collected that much money. But I knew they were a scam because they were only talking about white people when they were only blaming white people. That's what I didn't like about it before they got the money. Jeffrey said, I got to get to work. You're making me late every morning. Well, this is a situation where I'm glad to make you late, Jeffrey. I'm glad you got the value out of this. Hopefully you did. Abby said, what about archaeological evidence? Okay, that one is maybe more solid, but I don't know why you came up with that example. Joe said, sounds like speed dating. What are you referring to? Bebu said, why can't Tuskegee Airmen's legacy be studied? They are heroes and not problematic. Who said they can't be studied? You can study anything you want, Bebu. I think you're referring to what the government is talking about, but the government doesn't stop you from studying anything that you want to study. You go on Amazon and buy as many books as you want on any subject you want, and the government has no say in that. So I think you're talking more on a federal level, but that doesn't stop you from doing what you want to do. Engineer said, how do you force men to hold other men accountable or even listen? Well, you have to create a culture. That's the culture part. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's culture, not color. When you create a culture of people being held accountable, then people will be held accountable. In high-performing organizations, whether that's a family, a community, a business, a sports team, everyone is held accountable. There is a high level of accountability. Engineer, you're a sports fan? Think of any sports team that was really good for a long time. There was a culture of accountability. The New England Patriots, back in the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick days, it was a high level of accountability where I've heard people tell stories of how Bill Belichick would yell at Tom Brady. He was the star of the team. He would yell at Tom Brady in front of everybody for messing up. What is that? That is a high level of accountability. When everyone can be held accountable, there's a high level of performance. China said, yes, open-minded. Yes. Bebu said, I don't understand that reasoning. Wrong is wrong regardless of race. Well, wrong is an opinion. Bebu says, so are you a January 6th sympathizer? So what you just gave me, Bebu, is a straw man question, straw man alert. When you start a question with so, you're about to rephrase something that I didn't say, and you just did it. Christine said, there's still more coming out about January 6th. Lady Who Means Business said, nice explanation, except history has shown erasure brings out the nuts / H deniers. Well, Lady Who Means Business, my response to that is, so what? Nuts exist in life, and people who you disagree with exist, and people who deny things that you believe exist, and you cannot stop them from existing. They have just as much a right to their opinion as you have to yours. Just because you disagree with someone else's opinion does not mean they're not allowed to have it. That's what free speech means. And this is an issue, not just you, Lady Who Means Business, but everybody. A lot of people have this issue is that when they hear things that they strongly disagree with, is as if people want to stop those voices from being heard. I strongly disagree. You should allow everyone to say whatever they want to say. And that's why we have the marketplace of ideas. If someone has a trashy idea, do not try to stop them from sharing that idea. You should encourage them to share as much as possible, because if the idea is as trash as you say it is, they are going to expose themselves when they get into the open marketplace. And if their idea is good, when they get into the open marketplace is going to respond positively to it, which is going to teach you something. But if the idea is trash, then you'll prove yourself correct. But you got to let them say it so that the world can let everybody know what they think about the idea. But we can't go and call somebody, oh, well, you're anti-vax, for example, because you didn't want to take the jab. Okay, so what if I'm anti-vax? I'm allowed to be anti-vax. And if the open market decides that I'm wrong, then open market can tell me. And if the open market agrees with me, then the open market agrees. This is the way life works. Everyone needs to be allowed to share whatever they want to share, and let's see how the world responds to it. And if there's a bunch of if you think someone's an idiot and they got a really bad idea and they put it out there and there's a bunch of other idiots who agree with it, so what? They're allowed to agree. That's what free speech means. People are allowed to believe what they want to believe. You cannot legislate thought. People can think whatever they want. If you disagree, so what? Disagree. Go to the open market and prove it. The open marketplace commandment is one of the 12 work on your game commandments. I got a whole book right here called the Work on Your Game Commandments. One of the 12 commandments. Number 7 is the open marketplace. Number 7 commandment is the open marketplace results. So you are judged by the results of the marketplace, not by the opinions of random people, regardless of who they are. Lady who means business said, that says all I need to know about you. Okay, fair enough. I don't know what it is that I said, and hopefully you got what you wanted to know. James Servone says, well, then they should have cut their sentences in half, not a free pardon. A pardon is not free. You are already incarcerated. That ain't free. You know anybody who's ever been in jail? It ain't free. Bebu said, that's the same defunding the Capitol Police who were hurt. You seem to not care about their pain. Bebu, get out of here with this feminine shit. I seem to not care about their pain. You straw man again. That's 2 straw mans in a row. You got to come with something better. Bebu said, I'm sorry to hear you normalizing not backing the blue Capitol Police. All right, again, you got to come with something better. All right, one more straw man comment, then you're going to have to go. Jazz said, January 6th is unforgivable. They broke into a closed federal building. They wanted to unalive people. Well, you cannot judge someone's thoughts, Jazz. I get what you're alluding to, but what someone wanted to do, you can't judge unless you can read somebody's mind. I've got to meet a human being who's capable of reading the minds of other human beings. We can only go off of what we can see, and we can judge actions. You cannot judge intent. Lady says, so what is what I say about your commentary? I don't get what you're saying. Lady said, you should stay in the business lane. You're very successful there. I respect that, but this, no. All right, well, first of all, I'm an entrepreneur, which means I do whatever I want, and no one tells me what I can or need to or should do. Number 2, you said I'm very successful there. How do you know? But thank you, I guess. And you say you respect that, but this, no. Well, lady who means business, all due respect to you. What you respect or don't respect means nothing to me. I don't even know who you are. And as I said earlier in this live, which you missed, you cannot disrespect someone who you don't have a chance to respect. You can't disrespect or respect the person who you never met in person. So anything that's said on the internet cannot be respect or disrespect because we don't know each other. So this doesn't really mean anything. People tend to throw that respect word around when they're either trying to show more appreciation or less appreciation for something, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And you said this, no, if you disagree with what I'm saying, that's fine. Just tell me what your disagreement is. Just tell me what exactly you disagree with, and I'll engage you on the subject. But if you're just saying, well, whatever you're saying, no, you're not really saying anything. So give me some context. I will gladly engage. Admiral said, freedom is not a net positive. We are free to be dumb, lazy, and ignorant. That's right. That's why we talked about the law of entropy. People are free to be whoever they want to be. And you cannot legislate how people want to behave or think. Baybo, you're talking about Arlington. That's not the subject here today. If you want to talk about that, what you should do, Baybo, is start your own live stream and talk about the topics that you want to talk about. That is not the topic here today. Cindy said, LOL, yes, they're going to find out what really happened on January 6th. I don't know what that means. Here to Serve said, the pawns were pardoned. I think we still don't know the whole story behind January 6th. We probably never will know the whole story. That's the issue with stories, folks. The issue with stories is that they're stories. I got a story, you got a story, he got a story, she got a story. Everybody has a story. Do the stories need to match up? No. Everybody has a story. So will we ever know the true story? No. Here's what's going to be the outcome of January 6th after everything is that there are going to be some people who believe this, some people believe that, some people believe this thing over here, and people are going to stay where they want to stay. That's what's going to happen. That's how history works. There is no definitive history of anything. Everything is questionable because the only people who get the right history are the people who live to tell the story. People who died can't tell their story. So their story gets told by other people, and maybe those people are fair to them. Maybe they're not. We will never really know. Joe Byron said January 6th could have been a lot worse than it was. Okay. Everything that's ever happened, Joe, could have been worse than it was. I mean, that's fine. Tommy said they walked in through open gates. See, that's another thing about January 6th. People have different versions of what happened. Some people saw what happened on one side of the building, which looked like a riot, and then it looked like Game of Thrones or something. Then there was another side of the building where people were just walking in and security guards are waving at them and smiling at them and having conversations, and there's no problem. So it depends on which angle you saw of the story. There's so many different stories, and they all conflict with each other. Isaiah said, how did you become successful? How do you define success? But to answer your question, 4 main pillars of what I teach to people and been teaching for 20 years is discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. So we can start there, also known as mindset, those 4 pieces. Lady who means business said, no disrespect when you put yourself out here and it's all crazy. Oh, that's fine if that's your opinion. I don't need you to say no disrespect. Again, I don't know you, so your respect or disrespect is immaterial to me. If you think what I'm saying is crazy, tell me what exactly you disagree with. I'm asking you for the second time, what exactly are you disagreeing with? I will gladly engage if you can be specific. You haven't done so yet, which tells me that you might not quite know. Cindy said, Bondi, well, she's digging deep. Yeah, I've heard. But some people still won't believe anything Bondi comes up with because she was appointed by who? See, that's the issue, folks. This is just the world that we're in, and we just have to accept this. There is no conclusion to any of this stuff. This is just the world that we're in, and we have to accept this, especially as long as Trump is around. A lot of people really don't like him, and you can even go as far as to say hate him. Anything that he does or anything that anyone who is connected to him does, people will not like just because of who they're standing next to. This is human nature. Let's see. Lady Who Means said, thanks for chatting with me. I wanted to hear the other side, and I did everything. All right, cool. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. If you liked this one, come back on Monday. Today's Friday, so we'll be off Saturday and Sunday. We'll be back on Monday. And hopefully TikTok gets sold. This is the deadline on Saturday. The deadline's tomorrow, right? So we'll see what happens with TikTok. Maybe to get bought by Amazon. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. We'll see who buys TikTok because allegedly the deadline is tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with TikTok. Hopefully it's here on Monday. So I will be back on Monday. Topic is TBD, to be determined. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. I do these usually talking about a current event. Sometimes I talk about an evergreen subject, but usually it's something that's happening in the news right now that tends to work better, than evergreen topics in terms of like drawing people's attention in. If you like this one, come back Monday. If you hated what I said here today, come back on Monday. If you are indifferent about what I said, you could take it or leave it, come back Monday. If you're unsure because you only caught a little bit of it and you're not quite sure how you feel about me yet, come back on Monday. One thing I will say while we're still here, shout out to all my moderators who are in here helping out. Thank you, Carla, for helping out. Thank you. Nikki was in here earlier. I don't know if she's still here yet. Nikki, I see. Erica also. Thank you to the moderators who have been in here helping me moderate the room and pin the comments and make sure we get likes. Can we get the 40K likes? We're at 39.2 right now is what I see. Can we get the 40K before we wrap this one up? I am on other platforms as well. So I'm on TikTok. That's where I'm reading all the comments from, which is over here. But Instagram is right here. X, LinkedIn, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube are over here. So I'm on all these platforms at the same time. TikTok just has the largest audience. That's why I'm looking at this camera when I'm reading the comments. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel because the replay to this live is on my YouTube. As soon as this is over, the replay will be on YouTube. I got more than one YouTube channel, so just look my name up on YouTube. My name is Dre, D-R-E. Moderators, when you put my name in the comments, Dre Baldwin, D-R-E-B-A-L-D-W-I-N, in the comments so y'all know how to find me. That's my company name is Work on Your Game. If you look that up, you'll see it in a lot of places, but you'll see that. If you see that, you're going to see me. If you see me, you're going to see that. All right, so yeah, thank you, Nikki, for putting that in there. And Work on Your Game's name of the company is also the name of my brand and slogan, I guess you can call it. And what else is there? Replay is going to be on YouTube. Today is April 4th. We'll see if TikTok still exists on Monday. Hopefully it does. If TikTok goes away, I will be on YouTube. All right, so if TikTok is banned in the United States on Monday, my live will still happen. It will be on YouTube and every other platform, just not TikTok. So hopefully TikTok exists. But if it doesn't exist, folks, if you don't see me here Monday, if you give it till about 8:30, sometimes I start a little bit late. If you don't see me live by 8:30, that means one of three things. One, I'm not alive anymore. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. Two, I didn't pay the internet bill. Internet bill is paid. Three, TikTok no longer exists. That means I'll be on YouTube. Okay, so there's the only ways you won't see me live on Monday. Or if I get sick. I don't get sick that often. That could be another possibility. All right, so I will see all of you Monday morning. Everybody have a great afternoon. If we can help you with anything over here in our world, you want to learn about any of our books or programs or courses, anything like that, send a DM. My assistant's watching the DM. She will write you back and give you all the information you need. For whatever reason, TikTok doesn't allow links in the DM, so we would just have to send you a URL. You have to type it in yourself. TikTok needs to fix that. So somebody needs to buy TikTok and make it easier for us to send information. But that's it, everybody. Everybody have a great day. We stop just after 10 o'clock. Y'all get the rest of your days. Have a great weekend. I'll see everybody on Monday. Work on your game. We are out of here.